previous video, we created our first visualization, but it doesn't actually look that good. So what we're going to do is format it. We're going to change things like the color and the size and other things. So let's click into format, and you can see we have got several categories of formatting. I'm just going to start off with the third one, grid. So if I expand that by just clicking on it, we can see that there are several different types of properties or formatting that you can do. So whether it's a vertical grid, and you'll notice that this is a toggle, it's an on-off switch. So to switch it on, you just click onto it. And this effect is fairly minimal at this stage anyway. You see a dotted line appear vertically just down there. Similarly, horizontal grid, it adds, or in this case subtracts, little lines, but we can hardly see the lines. So what I'm going to do is scroll down to here, text size, and I'm going to expand. And this makes it actually readable. So now when I do things like the vertical grid, it's much more likely that you can actually read it. Now I can change the color, for instance, make it stand out much more. For instance, I can increase the thickness, and you can see what all of these things do. So if you're using an older version of Power BI, bear in mind that some of the options may be hidden away. So here we can add thickness to the horizontal grid between the lines, and you can increase the row padding. So if it's too concertinaed, if it's too inwards, then you can just expand it. You've got an outline color. So you can see that separates the totals from the data and the data from the headings. And again, an outline weight. So how much weight do you want this line? How thick do you want the line? And at the bottom of each of these little sections, there is a revert to default. So if you made changes, don't like them, and you want to go back all the way to where the computer started, click revert to default. If you just want to go back one step, then you can always use the undo, which is up here in the ribbon at the top. So that will just undo a step or so. Unlike Excel, you can't get a list of all of the things that you can undo and redo. It's just these little icons that you have to repeatedly click if you want to go back several steps. Now, part of the reason for showing you the grid first is because the column headers, the values, and the totals are subdivisions of the grid. So the grid affects all three of these, whereas if you wanted just to affect one of them, then you would go into the, say, the column headers, you go into the column headers and change. So suppose I wanted the column headers to have a size 16, that can be done without affecting the rest of the grid. Now, in more recent versions of Power BI, there are additional options with the outline or the border. I can say I want the border to be at the top, bottom, left, or right of all sections, or the column header, or the values section, or the totals section. So you can really fine-tune what you've got in the border. I can also adjust the border and the grids as well. And for more options, I'll click on that format grid, say, and that will take me to the appropriate place. So this is how you can change the formatting options to the grid and the column headers, value section, and the totals. You'll see various options. For instance, there's the font color. So we have an array of 60 different colors, and these are theme colors. And they are colors that are given by the theme that is either the default theme or theme that you have applied. And so in this case, we have a sort of red color here. And then we have various colors which are offsets of this. So 20% lighter, 40% lighter, alternatively 25% darker, 50% darker. So you can select which particular color relating to the theme you want. Alternatively, you can click on custom color, and custom color gives you access to the wheel. Now let me explain what the wheel is. Colors are made up of red, green, and blue. And you can see this particular location all the way over here is the most red, over here is the most blue, and over here is the most green. So it's how much intensity, how much of red, green and blue do you add that makes up all of the different colours. So you can see that if they all have the same colour to the equal intensity, then you're going to get a white colour. So if you wanted red and then start adding blue, well, this is the maximum amount of red over here, and then we start adding blue by going around the colour wheel. Similarly, if we started with red and added green, that gives us the maximum amount of green. That's the maximum amount of blue with red, and then if we go any further, we start subtracting red from it. So basically, find a colour that you want on this wheel. It's got all 16 million colours that your Excel would have. And if the human eye can't even see 16 million colours. So find what colour you want, click on it, and you'll see in this case the column headers have been coloured this particular colour. You can similarly colour background colours the same way. So maybe a nice yellow. Now, if you are familiar with colour wheels, then you'll have noticed at the bottom we've got this hexadecimal 6 letters or numbers, followed by an amount of red, a number from 0 to 256, then green, and then blue. So you can adjust it in hexadecimal on the left hand side, or in the new format pane, you can also adjust the individual figures from 0 to 255 on the left hand side, red, and then green, and then blue. Looking at other features, we have the opportunity to change the font. So you can see the font family, so that is the major font. So maybe I wanted Comic Sans for this. And you can see what text size you want, what alignment you want, whether it's left aligned, centered, you can see the region name changing, and right aligned, and whether there is word wrap on or not. And that means that if there is insufficient text, insufficient room for the text in the column, then it can go onto a second line. And you'll see we have identical or fairly identical options for the values and the total. Now, if you want not to format the entirety of this table, but just various aspects, like for instance the region name, then what you can do is go down to field formatting, and you can select which field, which column you want to format. So I might want to have the region name in red with a sort of orange background. You can change the alignment. You can have this font style applied to the header or not, and apply to total affects whether the total is similarly coloured. So in this video, we've had a look at changing the font, changing the font size, and changing the colours of visualizations. So you can see that the format icon here, we are divided into lots of different categories. Some affect more things than others. The grid affects the entire visualization. But you can narrow it down and affect all of the values, or you can narrow it down further and affect just the field formatting. In the next video, we'll have a look at some different types of formatting you can do to this visualization, style to your visualizations. And first of all, we're going to have a look at the style. Now, there's only one drop-down box in here, and this allows for a preset series of styles that can affect things like the grid, column headers, values, and so forth that we have looked at in previous video. So let's just have a look at some of these styles. So none just gives you a really standard style, but you'll notice that all of the visualizations that we have previously put on, for example the size 13 and the background and foreground characters, are overriding this style. Now minimal, so you can see the difference between none and minimal. It's got a little bit of colour in the dividing lines, and is slightly spaced out. So if I just go into the field formatting for region name and just revert to format, so here you can see the difference between none and minimal. bold header is minimal, but it just colours header. And again, if you don't like that particular colour, you can go into column headers and just change it. Alternating rows. So here you can see that every other row, so the second, the fourth, the sixth rows, have got an alternating background. And again, you can edit that by going into the values, and you'll see not just a font colour and a background colour as we have with the column headers and the totals, but also an alternate front colour, fore colour, and a back colour. So maybe I wanted the back colour to be blue, or perhaps a bit lighter than that, 60%. Lighter? No, I want it even lighter maybe, so let's just find a suitable colour. There we go. Contrasting alternating rows just gives you the alternating rows, but with a black background for the first, third and fifth. Flashy rows, well, that's sort of what I was trying to do in the previous video. It's like the previous visualization. So we have a blue, but then a darker blue, maybe a bit of a green, and again, you can have that with flasher headers as well. Sparse just gives you really black and white layout, so you can see the difference between minimal and sparse, for instance, and then condensed, you can see the difference between that and none is just the top and the bottom. But that gives you a certain amount of style that you could be starting with. So if you're unsure how much colour to add in, you might want to have a look at these and go, what might look good? I wouldn't advise adding huge amounts of colours to everything you're doing, just enough to make it stand out a bit, but not put people off. So in addition to style, going further down, we also have got title. So if I open up title, you can see nothing's enabled, and that's because it's switched off. But if I switch this on, I can put in a title, a header right at the beginning. So sales volume per region name. And you can see that right at the top, very small text, too small for me. So I'm going to center align it. I'm going to increase the font size, and I'm going to have a background and a strong foreground. And I'll probably change the font as well. So that just gives me a bit of an emphasis as to what we are looking for here. Similarly, there is a background tab available, and the background tab just allows you to set an overall background. So if I go back to the style and change this to minimalistic, then if I go to the background, I can change it so that it has a little yellow background, but you can hardly see the yellow background. That's because the rest of the background is not translucent, it's white. And so what I really want is a no background for all of the white colours that I've got. But unfortunately, if you go to grid, you'll find that you can't choose a no colour like you can in Excel. You have to choose a colour even if that colour is white. So this background is probably not so useful for tables, probably more useful for other visualization. Like if I go into a pie chart, you can see the visualization there may work quite nicely with a yellow background, but here it just gives a yellow outline. Then there is a border, so if I just switch the background off, so this is a border around the text, so it may be a red border, and there we can see we've got a red border with a bit of a curve at the corners. So you can turn that curve on or off, basically with the radius setting. So that's with it off. But if I add the radius, that will give a curve around the edges, which could be quite appealing, depending on what you've got. And then finally, we've got a tooltip at the bottom. So this is shown when you hover over the visualization. So these are some of the stylistic formatting that you can do, not just with tables, but with other visualizations as well. So you can have a choice of default styles. You can add on titles and format them. You can add backgrounds, though probably not that good with tables. And you can add borders and have them slightly curved.